මීළඟට මැතිවරණ ප්‍රචාරණ වියදම්හි විනිවිද භාවය සහ සුපිලිපන්න භාවය හමුවේ දේශපාලන පක්ෂ සහ අපේක්ෂකයින්ගේ කාර්යභාරය පැහැදිලි කිරීම සඳහා කෙරෙන ගෞරවනීය ආරාධනය විකල්ප ප්‍රතිපත්ති කේන්ද්‍රයේහි ගරු විධායක අධ්‍යක්ෂ ආචාර්ය පාකිසෝති සරවනමුතු මහත්මයාට.
Mr. Saman Ratnayaka, Your Excellency, members of the present and past election commissions. A lot has already been said about the campaign finance meter, so I won't go into any sort of detailed description of what it entails. The basic point, I think, with the campaign finance meter is it's founded on the assumption that without restrictions on the amount of money that a candidate or political party can spend, that the electoral process would be distorted. And I think implicit in that notion is that he or she who spends more is likely to get more votes. Now, whilst there is no comprehensive evidence to suggest that that is the case, nevertheless, I think it is important to recognize that it does distort the electoral process and that some sort of discipline needs to be imposed on political parties and candidates, or else it will be a free-for-all. I have always believed that the key thing at the end of the day is that there is accountability with regard to the money that is spent or donated to a political campaign or spent by a political party. You know, in a formal functioning democracy, elections are the basic mechanism of choice and change. The elector needs to have as much information as possible in order to make an informed choice. And in this era of technological change, and as a consequence, but not entirely because of, conspiracy theories of deep states and all sorts of allegations of that kind, knowing where the money comes from, knowing how it is spent, knowing that it is accounted for, I think is of paramount importance to enhancing and improving governance and government in this country. Everything in this country at the present moment is broken down, quite frankly. We have a social contract that is in pieces. There isn't an institution or process that functions as it was intended to. And this election in that respect, for a number of other respects too, it's a starting point for a new Sri Lanka in terms of democratic governance. And the campaign finance meter, I think, is pivotal to that in starting on the basis of inducing responsibility and discipline on the part of political parties and candidates. Now, as a campaign finance law on which this is based, it's not totally comprehensive. And I admit to you that we will never know the exact amount spent by candidates and political parties. That total degree of transparency, I think, is difficult to achieve. But nevertheless, that we have certain limitations on how much that can be spent. The imposition of that rigor, the deterrence that the law provides, and that it is open to the public to participate in the electoral process in terms of reporting on finance and how it is spent, I think is tremendously important, as I said, to rebuild the social contract in this country. So I'm not going to say much more, because at the end of the day, this is going to be up to you and up to us to make as much of a success of this mechanism. And also, whilst we employ it, we will come across its drawbacks, its shortcomings, and hopefully in the next round of elections, parliamentary, provincial, local, we will be able to plug those gaps. I think at the end of the day, this should not be interpreted as a means of restricting political parties, restricting freedom of expression, freedom of association, restricting people from giving money, if they so wish, to whatever political party they choose. But what it is saying is that we don't want our democracy to be bought and sold. As the Commissioner said, we don't want to be consumers. For too long, I think, we have been onlookers. We've gone and voted every 5 years whenever it's been possible, and then watched a farce on stage which passed for governance and government, went home and criticized it, but did absolutely nothing about it. This cannot be the case anymore. We cast our vote, but we also recognize that in a functioning democracy, eternal vigilance is the key. We cannot leave everything in the hands of those who we've given a mandate to. And therefore, with regard to campaign finance, I hope that we will be able to make a difference, not in terms of curbing the enthusiasm of political parties and candidates, but ensuring that they act with a greater degree of discipline, of responsibility, transparency, and accountability. And as I said earlier, for me, the key is that accountability. We know where the money comes from and how it is spent. So let's hope that we can make a difference, and as is often said, that we can be the difference that we want to make.